Introducing Minor Wisdom Quintet.
1, 2, a skidda-didda-doo.
Minor Wisdom.
Another week in isolation and another week quarantined in your house. Us teachers, though, we should be very, very grateful that we have a job and that we are being told to stay busy with our job, teaching kids through online formats. I know that it's frustrating for some teachers to be doing this because they haven't been using online formats to teach their students or online technology to teach their students, and now they're being forced into doing it, which is, I think, a very good thing for some of us. Anyway, be grateful for what you've got. Please, please, please understand that there are a lot of people out there that are not able to work right now. There are a lot of people out there that have been laid off or furloughed or told that, you're going to keep a job or keep benefits or things like that, but you're not going to get your bi-weekly paycheck or anything like that. So I'm very, very grateful. I'm actually having a pretty good time in my house. We have been making puzzles. We've been doing all kinds of stuff here. And, with two kids, yes, it can be a little rough because we also have to educate them as well. One we've done better with than the other, but it is still what it is. And I'm spending a lot of time with my family, and I'm very grateful for that. And hopefully this does end soon, because I do want to be able to go outside without the fear of contracting a virus. And I think that's everybody's fear, isn't it? Yes. Hopefully I'm not alone with that one. This week on the podcast, this was recorded before we were put in isolation. This is with Pam Wilson. Pam and I taught together at Morton Ranch High School in Katy ISD. We taught together for 2 years, from 2008 to 2010. And then I left Pam kind of unexpectedly. She was not happy with me at the time, but I left Pam for Straight No Chaser back in 2010. And I didn't really learn to appreciate Pam Wilson until I became the head director at Dulles High School and started realizing all the things that I knew because of what I saw Pam do. And that was really important to me. And so I reached out to Pam actually, a year, 2 years ago, and made sure that she knew how much I appreciated her and how much I didn't realize I appreciated her at the time as well. And kind of threw out the idea, hey, I know you're probably not an avid podcast listener, but if you wouldn't mind coming on to my podcast, that'd be wonderful. And we found the time, obviously, because we were out of school, and she's been retired for a little bit now, but I was able to sit down and have some coffee with her. She had her chai tea latte as usual, and we had a nice little chat. We did chat before and we did chat after, but the only thing you're going to hear is what I hit record for. So listen to Pam's story. It is very unique. It is a long story, or it is a long background, if you will, not a long story necessarily. But it is an extensive history that she's been in education, and comes from a very unique spot because she hasn't always been in Texas. I hope everybody is doing well. I hope everybody will enjoy WrestleMania weekend. It's already been taped. I don't know the results. If you want to look them up, you can. Please enjoy this week's Groaner joke of the week. Where does the electric cord go to shop? An outlet mall.
I started teaching in Opelika, Alabama, back in the 60s when forced integration was happening. It was right next to Auburn University. Okay. It's a twin city of Auburn, Alabama. And it was right at the beginning of forced integration of the schools. And so I was involved with the school on the wrong side of the tracks being either closed down, or half of the kids would go to the other side of the track school, and Opelika was a big challenge because of the demographics of that situation. Then I went to Phoenix City, Alabama, which was entirely worse. And after that experience, no, it was at West Point, Georgia. At that time, my husband was in and out of the Navy, and we went to Dam Neck for a while. It was a mess. But anyway, at West Point, Georgia, it got really chaotic when the National Guard had to move in onto the football field. So I went home and took a pair of manicure scissors and cut up all my teaching certificates for Georgia and Alabama, and said I'd never enter the classroom again. Long story short, we eventually moved to Charleston, South Carolina, where I kind of dabbled in substitute teaching, but really was on the historic Charleston tour business, is what I did. And then we moved to Texas, to the Rio Grande Valley. And I taught for 20 years in Los Fresnos High School, at Los Fresnos High School. Initially, the principal, Dr. Reese, hired me as a journalism teacher, and he walked me into the classroom, which I was going to have, and I go, holy cow, this is a theater classroom. And I said, could we renegotiate that assignment? And we did, and I became the speech, theater, and for about 6 or 7 years, an English teacher. And then I grew the program to the point that it became very successful. And I really, really enjoyed the Rio Grande Valley and teaching down there. Moved here to Houston to open a school called George Bush High School. Stayed there for 1 year. And when Katie called me, and the rest is history. I taught for a little while at Katie High School.
With Rachel.
Right. And learned the Katie way.
Yeah.
And then Bob Bryant hired me, along with Joe Camerata, to become the fine arts chairman and theater director, PAC manager at Morton Ranch High School. And stayed there for what, 15 years? Yes.
Something like that.
15,
Really,
14 or
was it
15.
Really? Yeah, I guess so.
Yes, 14 or 15 years, yes.
Wow.
And I thought I would miss it when I left after teaching for 38 years, but I don't.
Yeah.
I didn't. It was
Well, you're
just
still
amazing.
Involved. You're
Very
still,
involved.
Yeah, not with Morton Ranch, but with
Yes.
education.
Yes. Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So that leads me to, and we were talking off mic before this, your, not your, Texas, doing curriculum, working some in Lubbock, mentoring students through the University of Houston, et cetera, et cetera. So
Right.
you're still keeping
Yes.
very active in education.
Yes.
And
Yes.
at 45 years old, I don't know how you do it, but
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. So just some history, because I don't know if everybody knows. You and I taught together at Morton Ranch
Yes.
for 2 years,
Yes.
and that was the fourth year at Morton Ranch. Was because you were there alone for a little bit, right?
Yes, and then
Jack.
I had another person before you for
Yeah,
2
for 2
years.
years.
So it was
like
after
fourth or
it was the
fifth
5th year.
Okay.
Fifth year of
And then we
of,
taught
Mo-
for 2
of
years.
Morton's.
And then I got a really good job.
Yes.
And told you the very last day that I
Yes.
could possibly tell you that I'm
That's
leaving.
right.
And you were not happy with me,
No.
but you understood.
Yes. Yes.
And then left, and this is now, you said even before this, let's turn the podcast back on me.
Yes.
So for a second, I'm going to turn it on me. But what I didn't realize, because when I left you, I didn't know if education was really what I wanted to do. And here I am with a master's now, and so on to the second. But at the time, I left thinking, I'm going to be a professional, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be a lighting designer, tour the world. And I did, and I was great. Toured the country, not the world so much. But then when I got my job at Dulles, and I was working alone, because I didn't have a second yet, the program wasn't big enough yet, I realized how much Pam Wilson taught me. And you don't know that, but there was so much that and I don't even remember necessarily even physically leaning over your shoulder to see what you were doing, but there was so much by osmosis that I guess I was getting from you and what you just did on a daily basis running a program. So much so that it brings me to a point that I do want to ask you about.
Okay.
I just got into a conversation with somebody about how in the university setting, one of the issues with teaching education to theater people is that, and maybe they do this in the summer MA program, I don't know. As a matter of fact, I would assume they do. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of theater teachers that go off into teach theater their first, second year and don't realize the simple thing of buying rights, for instance, right?
Right.
They don't understand. It's kind of like becoming an adult not knowing how to write a check.
Right.
Okay? Simple things that you don't even think about. Oh, I need to teach that person that stuff.
Yes. Yes.
So that's the kind of thing I learned from you. It was the simple things. It was also like how to run a booster meeting, which I know is a sore subject with us during our time there.
Right.
But even those types of things, how to run a contest,
Oh, yes. We did that a lot.
Yeah. And now every year at Dulles I've run a contest, and I wouldn't have been able to do it. Now it's like it's just super easy.
Yes.
You have your checklist,
Yes.
and you go through it, and you're done, and everything's good. But all those simple things I learned just kind of watching you do it.
Well, thank you.
And it was invaluable. You don't learn how to do that stuff in college, in university.
Evidently
so
not.
Yeah.
I think with the teacher candidates that I have been working with, and their mentor teachers on their campuses, they are learning a lot from the mentor teacher. I think the mentor teacher is really the most important part of the puzzle between the supervisor, the assistant supervisor, which is what I am, and then, of course, the mentor teacher is invaluable.
Right.
And a lot of those simple things are learned by just watching.
Right.
And I would not have been able to start the program in Morton Ranch. It was my third program starter, you might say, from Los Fresnos to Bush to Morton Ranch, if I hadn't had the experience that I had. Los Fresnos was a real learning curve because I didn't know how to do the simple things in Los Fresnos. And there were lots of stumbles, probably, but a lot of success and wonderful students and wonderful support from the superintendent on down. So that helped a whole lot. And it's always a learning curve. I mean, what Samuel French has done with, what is it starts with a C, Cortland or whatever the name of it is, that they have merged with is a totally different ballgame than it used to be now.
Yeah.
And everybody is loving them and enjoying the experience. So it's all good. It really is.
Yeah. So, but how do you get to the teachers that are doing like I did alternative certification, right? Those teachers. So let me back up. There's an issue right now in theater teaching or in teaching theater that people are leaving the profession.
Oh, that was one of the things I wanted to talk about. Yeah. It's really beginning to bug me that after 2 or 3 years, and I can only speak to theater teachers, but I'm seeing it really kind of across the board. There's a lot of disillusionment and illusionment. There's a lot of depression almost, and they can't seem to connect to colleagues or they don't have a colleague in their department, and they're very alone, and they don't have the support. Money is an issue, trying to find vendors and making the accounting departments understand what to do, and they just quit and get out of the field. It's happening here in Katy with a couple of teachers and that have been in it for maybe 10 years and they're deciding no more, I can't handle this anymore. Or they find a different avenue that they want to pursue, which is okay, but hopefully they'll come back to education eventually like you did. But it's very bothersome, and I'm dealing with it to a certain degree in Lubbock with the theater consulting that I've been doing for a year there, and the teachers are really sponges, and they want to be better.
Yeah.
And I think I'm enjoying them immensely, and I hope they're enjoying me. But it's just a matter of showing the way.
Right.
You know, I thought writing curriculum was daunting. I did it for years with Texas Educational Theater Association, and got the curriculum approved by Texas Education Agency and the school board, and everything else. And it was a 1980s decade of work on curriculum with several other theater teachers. And I don't know how I got roped into it, but I did. And that has been the basis and the foundation for writing the curriculum and beyond with Lubbock. And it's really been very, very, very rewarding.
Yeah. So your sponge analogy led me to think about the idea that a sponge has to get water, you know, in order to work. So
That's right.
And that's part of the issue is this burnout is, you know, my ultimate goal is to go back into education and not even really leave, you know, in theory is to stay in the schools and to stay. I have found over the past few months, speaking of Bush High School, they were without a technical director.
That's right.
So I was able to go in as many days as I could, not as many as they would have liked, but as many days as I could, I would go there and teach those kids, and they are sponges.
Yes.
And I think what makes that department so successful is that they know they have more to learn, even though they've already done so much. And it's made me realize I like this workshop style. I like going in and I've said this on here before, I like going in as a grandparent, knowing that I can go in for an hour, hour and a half, and then I'm going to leave the kids to figure it out on their own. And that's kind of also what drew me to the idea of going back to school and then still consulting and workshopping. And I think that there's something to be said with that style of teaching, though, because a lot of theater teachers, it's that 8-hour day, then they get to do what they want by doing rehearsals. But because of, as you said, the financial element, the vendors, the not being able to create the show that they want because they're not able to get their hands on money or
the red tape.
Yeah, the red tape, the bureaucracy. It becomes such a drag.
It's a nightmare, and it takes away from the joy of rehearsing and the experimenting that you get to do in the rehearsal process. It takes away from it, and that's the biggest issue I think that education, especially in the theater education world, we have to deal with. And teachers need to understand that there are mentors out there like yourself, like me to a certain extent, or other people that all you have to do is reach out and they will help and guide you and feed you. And
so what do you think a solution is? You're one of the people that also taught me that don't come to me with a problem unless you also have an idea for a solution.
And that's one of the things that I have told a couple of teachers who have kind of talked to me on a one-to-one basis. You've got to figure out a solution. I cannot figure out the solution for you. I can give you ideas, but you have to greet the bull by the horns and turn it around in a compromising way that will help your program, help you, and help your students, which is more important.
And is it also an education of administrators and bookkeepers and budget people?
Yes, especially educators or administrators, I should say, who are not theater trained. They don't understand what theater or they don't, I wouldn't say they don't understand, they just don't comprehend
Right.
the enormity of theater.
Yeah.
You know, and as I've always told my kids, theater encompasses all of the fine arts. It's
Right.
not just acting
Right.
or technical work. It's music, it's dance, it's movement, it's art,
Yeah, art.
it's everything. And when they realize that, that helps a little, but they're still trying. A lot of fine arts directors, I'm finding, are trying to buttonhole
Right.
theater into being just acting
Right.
and playing theater games. And yes, you get to do a show, but the resources are up to you.
Yeah. Do you get in front of administrators? Have you been able to do that?
What do you mean in front
Like
of?
like a PD session for administrators saying,
Did
can
I?
take a
Yes.
sip.
Yes. Yeah, thanks. Yes, I have. To a certain extent, yes,
Yeah.
I have.
Do you think that's something that
It
should
helps.
be, yeah.
It helps a lot.
Yeah.
It really does. And I've talked to fine arts directors on a one-to-one basis as well. The first time I went to Lubbock, this is not the first year I've been in Lubbock.
Right.
I went, 2 years ago, 3 years ago this spring now, and spent like a full week visiting all of their campuses for facilities, updates, and how they are teaching. And I'm very proud that at least one thing was accomplished in the first year, and that was, or after the first year, was they were splitting high school teachers with a middle school. And so that second person in the high school was feeling disoriented
Right.
and not a part of the high school or the middle school. And they have taken the bull by the horns, and thank goodness to Mr. Babcock, who's the fine arts director, said this is the way it's going to be. And with the exception of one teacher, they are not traveling
Right.
from one campus to another anymore. And it's really extremely helpful to the collegiality that you want
Right.
on a campus. And I think it's retained
Right.
teachers. I think there was a couple of times that I talked to teachers who were doing the traveling that they were ready to quit.
Yeah, yeah. One of the the unique elements of Dulles High School is that the middle school is 100 feet away.
Yes.
And so I've been able, and now in 7 years, I've been able to see a student from 6th to senior year, 6th grade to 12th grade.
That's cool.
And so that's been fun.
Yeah.
But it's also really easy because
Yes.
I just walk a few feet, and I'm in the middle school.
Yeah.
The traveling element, which we've had, and we're going to have one next year too. Where I say they will have one. It will not be me anymore. But the traveling element is probably very taxing. Yeah, I didn't think about the fact that they don't feel necessarily a part of one or the other.
Yeah,
They're just
no,
there.
it's very rough on them. It really is.
Yeah.
And I think for anyone who has to split
Right.
schedules like that, it's very hard.
Right.
And just as a fine arts director, I remember for a while I had an orchestra teacher who was traveling,
Right.
and like you, 100 feet away,
Yeah.
basically. But at the same time, I needed to talk to him, and I couldn't
Right.
because he was at the other campus. And then, it wasn't necessary that I broach the subject when he finally gets on campus. And so it was just really, it was difficult as a quasi-administrator of the fine arts department to make it work with a
Yeah.
part-time teacher.
Yeah. What is something from, you were talking about your hard times or the difficulty of the late 60s and into the 70s, the civil rights and stuff. How did that prepare you for 20, 30 years?
Well, I look back on it and think it probably made me very obstinate, you might say. Like I literally stumbled into beginning teaching again.
Yeah.
We walked into Los Fresnos CISD to pick up some information about the schools because my daughter was in junior high.
Yeah.
And we wanted some information about the schools. We'd heard so many good things about the district, and my husband said, well, honey, why don't you get a teaching application at the same time? In 2 hours, long story short, I had a job. And I was very angry, angry at my husband for putting me in that situation, because I was a housewife and a tour guide and, just having a good time. And didn't really want to move to Texas, but we did. And it made me realize that I can ask for things. I may not get what I want, but I get close to it.
Right.
And that's why when I walked into that theater classroom and it had a courtyard stage and everything, I thought, oh my gosh, this is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And it fortified me enough to look at that principal, who was a stranger to me.
Right.
Can't we renegotiate this contract? All things are possible.
Right.
And that's what I think everyone, teacher or not, needs to realize, that you've got the power within you.
Yeah.
Whether it's girl power or man power, you've got the power.
Or they power.
They power, yeah. Right.
Do you still keep in touch with some of those kids from those days?
From
the Los Fresnos?
From Los Fresnos, yes,
Yeah.
definitely. I'm on their family page on Facebook, and yes. In fact, a dear friend just died recently, which kind of upset me, but that's, the way of the world.
From those days?
From those days, yes.
Was it a former student or
No,
a teacher, colleague?
it was a former parent.
Oh, former parent. Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was kind of heartbreaking. He was young, younger than I am.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's like, I've only been in the profession for 10 years, but over a 13-year span, but seeing some people that you and I both know very well from our days teaching together that are married, kids, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And it's so mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Some of them have been now teaching for multiple years. And,
Right.
It's crazy to think about that.
Yeah.
So, but fun at the same
Yeah.
time. Real easy to keep up with that stuff nowadays.
That's right. That's right.
Did you acted before you were teaching?
Yes, I did. I acted in college in Illinois, and acted some in Charleston with their little theater that's connected to the Dock Street. But other than that, not much. I will say in Los Fresnos, I had I had acting experience, and one of the neatest times of acting, I played Amanda in The Glass Menagerie, and I was directed by one of my students, my former students, who came home from college and did it, and it was just really a very good experience.
Yeah. Have you ever been in one of your school's shows?
No, I don't. I want to say no. I want to say no. I haven't.
Not necessarily as like a little bit part, like a little fun
no.
part, but like a
other
series.
than that they directing.
Yeah, other than that. Yeah.
Other than the directing in Los Fresnos, I don't think I've ever acted in one of my school shows.
Okay.
I got people roped into doing it.
Sure.
But I don't think I ever did.
Okay. I'm just curious.
I did a lot of, when the person after you came on board, I allowed him to become the acting director, and I was the tech director. So I did a lot of behind the scenes on the stage. I remember moving the big walls in Beauty and the Beast, for example, and stuff like that, but never seeing the show.
So do you classify yourself? How do you kind of classify yourself as a theater educator? Are you kind of an all around, like you just kind of do it all? Because even when I was there, which I was not an acting director by any means, but you still did a lot of tech. I mean, you did costumes for sure.
Yes.
I didn't want to touch that.
Yeah.
Practically all the props. But you would even come in. I remember one time you put a doorknob on a door.
Yes.
You showed Adam Ballard how to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember that very well.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
but like, how do you classify yourself as?
I think I'm more of a general theater director. I'm strong in a lot of areas of technical theater. I was surprised at how much I could talk with Gary and Aaron on the lighting situation they have at Sharpstown High School, for example, and I understood what they were saying, at being out of the business and not ever really working an Ion board. Certainly rented it lots of times, but now the Ion is at Morton Ranch, and they're all upgraded and everything. Sound was a big thing for me.
How did you? I mean, did that come to you through being an educator, or did you get educated in technical theater?
I didn't.
By necessity.
It was by necessity.
Yeah.
You know, I really didn't have a strong theater education before I came to Texas.
Right.
It was my theater education happened through Texas Educational Theater Association and my relationships with the Murrays and the Munozes and the Wheatleys and everybody else that I've come in contact over the 40 years or so.
Sure.
Going to the University of Texas helped immensely. David Nancaro taught me lighting, for example. John Brokaw taught me history of theater. Lathan Sanford taught me Fosse movement, for example. Yeah.
I haven't seen that, but yeah.
We called him the Bongo Man in the Winship Drama Building. But it was a lot of training by osmosis, learning by doing.
You're not afraid to jump in.
No, you cannot be afraid. You have to do it. I see a lot of passivity happening, and they just won't let us do that. I'm going, what do you mean they won't let you do it?
Yeah.
You know, get out and do it.
Yeah.
I had absolutely zip lighting instruments or anything in Los Fresnos, and I discovered that they used to have an auditorium when I moved there. So my husband and I, one Sunday morning, literally broke into the ag barn, which was the storage facility, and we found a follow spot, and we found equipment.
Yeah.
And my husband and I made it work. And we even built a light board before YouTube had the directions on how to do it.
Well, that's one thing about like Brad Cummins that I admire because he's the same way. He's kind of MacGyver-esque when it comes to there's no can't. It's just a matter of how you get from point A to point B. It's not that you can't get there.
Exactly. You know, you don't need a multi-million-dollar facility to do theater.
It makes it nice, though.
Yes. Oh, it sure helps. But I remember my kids in Los Fresnos. I miss, the most I missed about the Rio Grande Valley are the relationships that I built, but also the wind. And my kids used to hang on light trees that we finally built so that they wouldn't topple over.
Right.
And I remember putting on mounds of clothes when the wind was cold so that we could rehearse outside. So yes, you know, you just have to will it to happen.
Yeah.
You know?
So that leads me to another question. What is the most challenging thing that you've ever done in education? And maybe a challenging show or situation, or I can think of something challenging from our days, but it's not appropriate for a podcast.
That's right. That's one thing. Sorry, Blake. That's one thing that was very challenging. Yeah, and makes you want to throw in the towel sometimes.
Yeah. But think of artistic maybe,
things,
or production. Or,
artistic things.
I know. You know, when we were together, we did Birdie, which was not a super big challenge.
No.
But we also did Wizard of Oz, which is a challenging show to do.
Yes. Little Mermaid was challenging.
Yeah.
Beauty and the Beast, they got bigger.
So you're going along with my theme. I have a theory that the most challenging shows to do, at least in high school, maybe not Broadway or something, are the ones that people have expectations for.
Yes.
So Wizard of Oz, there's an expectation for how
Yes.
things should look.
Yes.
Beauty and the Beast, Disney, any Disney
Yes.
really.
Any Disney. Yes.
But Annie, there's an expectation to how Annie should
Yes.
look. Grease.
Right.
So there, but then like we did Bonnie and Clyde this year.
Wow.
Nobody knew anything about what this is supposed to look like.
Yeah.
They knew the story, the historical element of
Yeah.
it, but they didn't know like that Bonnie was supposed to necessarily have a beret and red hair. They kind of maybe remember that, but even in the movie, she's blonde.
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
But they talk about her red hair in the show.
Yes.
But you have shows that have expectations.
That's
and
true.
then it becomes a little more challenging.
That's true. That's true. Things like The Crucible, for example,
Yes.
and Arsenic and Old Lace. That was such a fun show. You did that.
Yeah, I was with you for Arsenic.
Yes.
Yeah, we did. You
That-
Can't Take It With You in Arsenic and Old
Yes.
Lace in the Black
Those
Box.
those two
Or
shows.
no, You Can't Take It With You was a UIL, but yeah.
Was it?
Yeah, I think so, right? Or am
No,
I wrong?
no.
What did we do?
No,
oh,
I
Last Night at
remember.
Ballyhoo was
Yes,
yeah.
I remember. You Can't Take It With You, and you threw up your hands. You couldn't make this thing work. You were the acting director. You came in, you got me, and I did the
That's
comedy
right.
sports
That's
thing.
right. That's right.
I did the comedy sports thing. Okay, you have a minute to do this. Now you're going to do the same thing in 45
Yeah.
seconds
Yeah,
and
the fast
down
forward.
to down to 15 seconds, and it was a fun experience.
Those shows were
Yeah,
intense.
a couple of those kids still
Oh,
remember that.
Yeah, I still keep in touch with quite a few of those kids.
Yeah.
I say kids, but now they're
Yeah.
30.
Yes.
So one of the things I always remember is one-act play, because we made it to region both years that I
Right.
was there, which was spoiled the hell out of me.
Yeah.
Because I'd come from teaching with Brandon Tiarina and Rowlett,
Yeah.
where we didn't make it out of zone that year. He
Yeah.
eventually went on to have UIL success, but
Yeah.
and that was my first year teaching, and then came and interviewed with you.
Mm-hmm.
Said I'm a technical director. You said you're hired.
Yes.
So I remember
Yes.
sitting in your office.
Yes.
But then we went on to have pretty good success with one act play.
Uh-huh.
And what you taught me from this too, and I've tried so very hard to teach my students this, but times have changed. Transitions are everything.
Yes.
Because when we did Last Night at Ballyhoo,
Mm-hmm.
I remember an adjudicator, and I don't remember which level it was, it might have been area or something, that said what made this show was that the transitions continued the story.
Yes.
The story kept going. You
Yes.
knew, in a 40-minute show, which is supposed to be 2 hours, what helped it stay in that 2-hour world was that
Right.
the transitions kept the story going.
And it's very important.
You don't just get up and walk out.
That's right.
And so I've tried so very hard.
Yeah.
I can't do
It-
you justice when it comes to that
come
stuff.
on.
But that's one of those things.
It's
that,
like painting a picture.
Yeah.
You don't stop the paintbrush.
Right.
It keeps
Well,
going.
and it's kind of a loophole, if you will, in the one-act play world.
That's
'cause
right.
There's so many regulations, and you can't tableau. But what you can
No.
do is tell the story without words.
That's right.
And so that was something I took
Yeah.
away from you as well.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But that show was really fun
Yes,
because they spoke Hebrew.
that's true. That is very
That's where I
true.
got to, I barely did any directing, if you will, for that specific show. But I remember that was when I was called in. They're like, bring in the Jewish guy.
Yes.
I taught Dalton how to say some Hebrew.
That's
and,
right.
But anyway,
That's
that
right.
was-
That ending of that show reminded me very much of Fiddler on the Roof in that scene celebrating the Sabbath. And yes,
Yeah.
it's they are both very, very close to my
yeah.
heart. They
What
really
is-
are.
What is your, I don't want to say favorite show. I think that's a weird way to say it.
Oh.
But what is a show that you could just do over and over and never tire of?
Something I could do over and over and never tire of.
And you
I
may have
hate
a couple.
questions like that.
Well, then, what's a show you just can't stand then?
Bye bye, Birdie.
There you go.
What show could I really? Lord Almighty.
I could do Ragtime over.
Oh, never did that show.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed, we were just talking about it. Last night at Ballyhoo, I loved The Boys Next Door.
Sure.
Absolutely loved that show.
Yeah.
And it has, yes, you can go very stereotypical in it, but we brought in a friend of mine who teaches special education and adaptive PE, actually, and she really helped us understand the different levels of deficiencies, handicaps that these kids had in this particular show, and the reasoning behind it. And we learned so very much from that experience.
Yeah.
I enjoyed You Can't Take It With You, and both of those were done in our black box.
Yeah.
I'm not a real fan of the big stage. I like intimacy, and maybe that's coming back from my college
Same
days.
With me. I agree with you. Yeah.
You know, my college days were the little black rooms in the attics of old buildings were our coffee shops, and where you heard the music being experimented with, or the poetry or whatever, and it harkens back to that, and I've really enjoyed the black box.
I think this is the second day in a row I've mentioned him, but my reason for loving the black box is the way Bob Singleton used the black box. So, and the intimacy thing, obviously, but the way that he was able to adapt a black box into whatever you wanted.
Yes.
So
exactly.
It could be if you love proscenium, you could make a black box of proscenium.
Yes.
But you could also make it a thrust or an arena or whatever.
Oh, anything you want.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah.
You know, it's wonderful.
Yeah. What is one piece of advice you've received that you've held on to all through however long you've had it?
Perseverance. I learned that early on in the theater world of teaching. You must persevere, and it was through the curriculum writing in the 80s that we did with this glorious fine arts director from TEA called Kim Wheatley, who led us down the path. And I learned that there is no obstacle unless you make it an obstacle.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Because we presented before the state school board, we presented to TEA, we were in it to win it. We wanted theater curriculum to be a legitimate academic curriculum in the schools, from the elementary all the way through the high school. And when I was president of TETA, we did a mission, you might say, of making it our goal to increase the knowledge for the higher ed people in this state, to realize that these kids have come maybe from the elementary all the way up through high school with some kind of theater knowledge, so that the professor doesn't say, forget everything you've learned. You can't, because these kids are knowledge-based in theater, whether it's acting or whether it's technician work or whatever. It's extremely important to persevere in your dream and your goal. That's what I think I've learned the most. Perseverance.
Minor wisdom.